I'm looking at a pre-built today, as you can see on the desk in front of me, and it's got quite the name. This is the R7 X3D 5080 Beast MSI Edition, or so they call it on their website. On paper, I think it's got a spec that kind of earns that title. It's got a Ryzen 7 9800 X3D paired with an RTX 5080. That should make it a bit of a beast for gaming. The question is whether the spec actually translates into the sort of performance that gives its name a bit of weight. Let's have a look, shall we, and see how it does. Hi guys, I'm Matt and welcome to Kit Guru. First of all then, let's start with the pricing and the warranty and stuff, as we always do. This PC comes from a company called Wired2Fire. They're a pre-built PC builder and retailer based in Surrey here in the UK. And they're asking for £2,744.99 if you pick up this computer. And if you try and if you build the same spec yourself, put it together on PC Part Picker, the price comes out at £2,887.09, including a Windows license, or £2,776.52 without one. So the pricing is very, very good straight out of the gates. For warranty, Wired2Fire provide 5 years of labour cover, 2 years of parts cover, and 2 years of collection and return costs cover, which I think is pretty decent and will go some of the way to offer some peace of mind should anything go wrong if you were to pick one up and something happens. If you do choose to fork over the best part of £3,000, you'll get the following in return. The processor, as I mentioned, is an AMD Ryzen 7 9800 X3D. That's an 8-core, 16-thread chip with a maxed boost clock speed of 5.2 GHz and a base clock speed of 4.7 GHz, and it runs on a stated TDP of 120 watts. As I've said in previous videos, this is probably the best gaming CPU on the market, and if you're going to call a gaming PC a beast, then aside from sticking a 9950 X3D in it, then I think this is the right and the sensible option to go for. The graphics card is an MSI RTX 5080 Gaming Trio OC. A pretty good pairing for the CPU in all honesty. It's got 16 gig of GDDR7 memory that runs across a 256-bit memory bus, and the card runs at a max boost clock speed of 2700 MHz, as we can see here in GPU-Z. I think the 5080 sits right in the sweet spot of I want extreme performance, but I also want to be able to afford to eat for the rest of the month, making it the better choice if a 5090 is a step too far. If you want a full deep dive into the 5080 performance itself, then make sure to go and check out Dominic's in-depth reviews on them after you've finished here. For memory, Wired2Fire have gone with 64 gig of Klevv Cras 5 RGB DDR5. That's running at 6000 MHz, or mega transfers. That's pretty much the sweet spot for AM5 gaming. It's set up in dual channel in two 32 gig modules, so we should have no problems there. It's got CL30 timing. In Ada, this kit delivered read speeds of 62,867 megabytes per second, and then write speeds of 86,581 megabytes per second. I think 64 gig is loads for a gaming system. It's probably a bit overkill still, I don't know. I run 32 in mine personally. 64 is nice to have. So you've got a good bit of headroom for heavier workloads if you want to do a bit of editing or something like that. Storage is handled by a 4TB Lexar NM790. That's a Gen 4 drive. And when I tested it with Crystal Disk Mark, it hit 7,456 megabytes per second read and 6,541 megabytes per second write. And I think with 4 terabytes of space, you've heard me moan about capacity before, you've got more than enough room for a pretty hefty game library, even if you plan on installing the latest Call of Duty and at least one other game. All of that stuff is sitting inside an MSI X870E Gaming Plus Wi-Fi motherboard, which is obviously built on AMD's latest high-end chipset. So you've got all the flashy features like PCIe Gen 5 support, solid power delivery for the 9800 X3D. You've got built-in Wi-Fi, as the name suggests. It's Wi-Fi 7. There's Bluetooth on board as well. You've got 5 gig LAN networking around the back, plenty of USB connectivity, and then full support for a Gen 5 SSD if you want to swap out to one in the future. It's a great board that I think suits the high-end CPU and GPU pairing pretty well. The I/O around the back consists of a HDMI port if you want to use integrated graphics at any point. You've got one USB Type-C 40 gig port, one USB Type-C 20 gig port, two USB-A 10 gig ports, and then two USB-A 5 gig ports. And then alongside that, you've got four standard USB-A 2.0 ports. You've got the 5 gigabit Ethernet port that I mentioned a minute ago, the antenna connectors for the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth, and then you've got some audio connectors down the back and the clear CMOS and BIOS flashback buttons. Power in the system is an MSI MPG A1000GS 1000 watt power supply, which is a generous wattage for the spec of the machine. It's got plenty of headroom for the 5080 and the 9800X3D, and it gives you a bit of flexibility with upgrades down the line if next generation you want to stick a better card in there if they do turn out to be more power hungry. It's fully modular, it's got 80+ gold certification, and it's got native support for modern GPUs, so you don't need any adapter cables or anything like that. Processor cooling is handled by a white MSI Mag Core Liquid i360 AIO liquid cooler. It's obviously got triple 120mm fans mounted to the 360mm radiator that's in the top of the case you can see in front of me, and it should easily be enough to keep the 9800X3D in check. We'll have a look at that a little bit later. The white pump head gives it a clean, almost icy look that I think fits in to the rest of the system's theme quite nicely. And everything I've just mentioned is housed inside the case you see on the desk in front of me, an MSI Mag Pano 110R PZ in white, as you can see. It's got tempered glass side panel, tempered glass front panel, and then, as you can see on the desk in front of me, it's got ventilation and RGB running around the lower, fifth of the case, if I had to guess at the percentage. It looks good, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a premium case, and it does feel like one of the areas where Wired2Fire have kind of kept costs down a little bit to save it hitting that final price. It comes with 4 pre-installed 120mm fans. You've got 3 reverse blade units in the side for intake, and then a standard 120mm fan at the back for exhaust. It's quite a compact case, and the only place it'll support a 360mm rad is in the top, so hence why they've stuck it there. There's no option to put it anywhere else at all. The cable routing options, not that I've built in this case, but they look fairly decent. The I/O is on the side and consists of 2 5GB USB Type-A ports and a single 20GB USB Type-C port, and then you've got a combo audio jack. They sit alongside the power button, of course, and then a button that can be used to change the lighting colour. I like this case. I think it looks pretty clean. It's fairly simplistic. It's not a mega high-end or premium case. It's been chosen to stick to a budget, I think, but it doesn't look half bad. Talking about design and aesthetics of the build as a whole then, I think my first impression when I took it out of the box was it's quite a clean little looking system. The contrast between the black and grey motherboard and then the GPU against the white components gives it some depth rather than everything just being the same and a little bit boring. The cooler's pump head matches the kind of white aesthetic that's going on pretty well, and it's got an icy kind of frosted look to it, which is exactly the kind of look you want to a cooler, in my opinion. The system has been put together well. Expo was enabled out of the box, which is always good to see, and the cable management is pretty tidy throughout the whole case. There was nothing loose, nothing crammed. It's just been, you can tell it's been put together with a little bit of care and attention to detail. The only very small nitpick I have is that the radiator fans haven't been connected to the fan hub that's inside the case, so controlling the lighting with the buttons on the side only changes the pre-installed fans, so the side fans and the rear fans. So if you want to manage your colours of your case using the button rather than going down the MSI Centre route, you're going to have to do a little bit of tinkering, which I know that seems like a little thing, but someone who doesn't know about that sort of stuff, they order the PC, get it home, press the button and it doesn't change those fans, they're going to be a little bit annoyed by it potentially. Before we get into the gaming then, which is coming in a minute, I promise, all I've done pre-testing is update Windows and the graphics card driver, and that was it really. There were no issues, no stability issues, no crashing, no nothing like that. I haven't had any problem with this computer. It's been quite a straightforward system to review, to be honest. Let's crack on and look at gaming then. And for these gaming tests, I ran the 5 titles you're about to see, both at 1440p and 4K, using maximum settings across all of the tests, and then 3 different configurations. First, you've got rasterized performance only, then we're adding in DLSS at the performance preset, and then we're adding DLSS in the performance preset and frame gen, up to 4 times multi-frame gen where it's supported. That gives you a clear picture of the raw GPU performance and then how much you can tack on and add on to that with a bit of NVIDIA witchcraft. Let's dive in then. Cyberpunk 2077, first off, at 1440p, ran at 70 to 90 FPS without no DLSS or frame gen. Turning on DLSS at the performance preset sees a pretty nice jump up to between 150 and 170 FPS, and then turn frame generation on at 1440p and you're looking at figures around 370 to 400 FPS. That's with 4x multi-frame gen, which is, in a demanding title like Cyberpunk, pretty impressive. Bump up the resolution to 4K, and without any DLSS or frame gen, just pure rasterized performance, you're going to land around the 50 FPS mark. Add in some DLSS performance preset to help with things, and you'll see that increase to around 100 to 120 FPS. And just like at 1440p, turn on 4x multi-frame gen, and that FPS meter jumps up to around the 300 FPS level. Summing that up, I think Cyberpunk remains one of the hardest titles to run on any hardware, to be fair. It performs well at 1440p, but native 4K does stay below 60 FPS, so you're going to need some DLSS to do a bit of heavy lifting if you want to play 4K with maximum graphics settings. Moving into some Battlefield 6 then, at 1440p we saw performance of 130 to 150 FPS. That's just pure rasterized performance, no DLSS or frame gen. Turn on DLSS at the performance preset and you see the FPS meter jump up to around the 200 level, sometimes dipping and rising away and above and below that. Add in some frame gen and it rises to a pretty crazy 500 FPS. Turn up the resolution to 4K then, and pure rasterized performance you'll see around 70 FPS, which is honestly pretty impressive for a game that's this new. They did a great job of optimizing this title. Add in some DLSS with the performance preset and you'll see the FPS meter climb up to between 120 and 130. And finally, stick on some frame gen and you'll see it jump up to around 300 FPS. So that's excellent performance across the board, I think. Even the native 4K stays above 60 FPS comfortably, which is always what I look to see. The third title I looked at then was F1 2025, which at 1440p, the computer absolutely smashed the performance. Rasterized performance was between 250 to 300 FPS. There was only a very slight uplift with DLSS on the performance preset, nothing really notable, but then you turn frame generation on and you're going to see figures north of 600 FPS. At 4K in F1, you're going to see rasterized performance of around 180 FPS, and then a rough 10-ish% increase with DLSS at the performance preset. The FPS meter rose to about 200, and then with frame generation, you're going to see between 430 to 450 FPS. This game, I think, is the only way to describe it is it's just easy work for this hardware. You can just run it however you want with the settings absolutely cranked and it'll be fine. Moving on to a much more demanding title than in Hogwarts Legacy, at 1440p, the performance was around 100 to 130 FPS with no DLSS, scaling or frame gen or anything like that. You're going to see around a 10 FPS uplift by turning on DLSS with the performance preset, so nothing really out of this world. But then, just like always, turn on frame gen and the FPS meter will jump up to between 400 and 500 FPS, which is crazy. You don't need that much frames in a game like this. What I would do personally is turn up the resolution to 4K, run it rasterized, and you're going to get about 80 to 90 FPS. Turn on DLSS. You're going to get around 120 FPS with occasional spikes up to the 140 to 150 level. And then again, turning on frame gen and you're looking at FPS figures of around 330 to 350. So I think that's a pretty strong showing overall, though the native 4K figure doesn't stay above 60 FPS in all scenes. So DLSS is going to help you pretty significantly in this title. Finally then we have Marvel Rivals, and running that at 1440p, pure rasterized performance with no scaling or frame gen, sees FPS of around 90 to 100. Add in some DLSS at the performance preset again, and we're going to see the FPS meter rise to around 130. And then finally stick on some NVIDIA Witchcraft 4x multi-frame gen, and the FPS meter shoots up to between 300 to 350 FPS. Bump the resolution up to 4K and it's around 50 FPS without any DLSS or frame gen, pretty disappointing honestly. Turn on DLSS performance preset just like before, and you're going to see the FPS meter about double to around 100 FPS, and then finally that frame gen is going to net you around 270 to 300 FPS.
Black Friday is storming in, Cyberpower PC bringing the deals. Laptops, shocking prices. New keyboard, treat yourself. But here's the thunder: buy any Black Friday PC and you can win your money back. Don't wait, ride the Black Friday storm of savings at Cyberpower PC.
Across all 5 titles then, the RTX 5080 delivers RTX 5080 performance. At 1440p, everything runs really well. At 4K, the lighter titles, they hold 60 FPS natively pretty easily, while the heavier ones, as we always knew was going to happen, like Hogwarts and Cyberpunk, they're going to benefit from DLSS and or frame gen to reach the experience that most people want, I'm guessing. If you insist on pure rasterized performance when you're going to run something, you're probably going to end up wanting to turn a few settings down here and there when playing really demanding games. People that are okay with scaling and frame gen, just turn on DLSS, turn on frame gen, and enjoy the dramatically higher frame rates, I suppose. Moving on to look at CPU and GPU performance over sustained synthetic workloads then. The Ryzen 7 9800X3D behaves as I expected it to. Across a 30-minute Cinebench multi-core run, the CPU held a steady 5.2 GHz. It peaked at around 85 degrees, and then it drew around 155 watts of package power. The 30-minute single-core run showed the same 5.2 GHz sustained clock speed, a much lower 53 degrees peak temperature, and then a 56 watt peak CPU package power usage. And just to give you something to compare that to, at idle the chip sits at around 40 degrees in my office and uses roughly 22 watts, so that's nothing out of the ordinary, that's fine. For the GPU, a 30-minute session of Cyberpunk 2077 pushed the RTX 5080 to 72 degrees on the main GPU sensor and 62 degrees on the memory sensor. So nothing to be concerned about, that's well within the card's operating limits and nothing I would ever call toasty. Here's a few clips showing the noise put out by the system during those scenarios, and then some thermal footage showing the heat build-up inside of the case when gaming. Overall then, the R7X3D 5080 Beast MSI Edition, that is its actual name, I promise, it does a very good job of living up to its actual name. The combo of the Ryzen 7 9800X3D and RTX 5080, they are just, I'd say, the best, the sweet spot for gaming. If you've got enough money, that is the spec to go for. You could go for a 5090 and a 9950 X3D, but it's the diminishing returns. You're just chucking money at a problem. At 1440p, this PC delivers outstanding performance that in certain games will push your monitor to its absolute limits rather than the other way around for a change. At 4K, things are a little bit more up and down. In lighter titles, the 5080 can hit smooth native performance at maximum settings, and then in heavier games like Cyberpunk, Hogwarts Legacy and Marvel Rivals, native 4K performance dips below 60 FPS, which is not what we want to see. So DLSS and frame gen can be used in situations like that. If you're opposed to using DLSS and frame gen, as I know a lot of people are, then just tinker with some settings, turn a few down, and you'll get above that magic 60 FPS if you want to play a single player title and really get stuck into it. And talking about the build quality and how the machine's been put together then, and I don't have a lot to moan about really. Expo was enabled out the box, the cable management's good, everything's been done with a little bit of care and attention, I think you can tell. The aesthetics are nice. I like the dark motherboard and graphics card contrasting against the rest of the white parts. I was worried that I would have thought as soon as I got it out of the box that it needed a white GPU, but I think the cooler does a good job of bringing it all together aesthetically with that white and the darkness. I think it looks like a kind of snowy mountain face. Is that me being a bit arty-farty? It reminds me of that anyway. The only things I can moan about is the radiator fans not being connected to the fan hub so they don't change colour with the button on the side of the case. If someone didn't know about that and bought this computer, they would press it and maybe get annoyed. And then the case itself, it definitely feels like this is a cheaper pick in the spec list to help keep the price down, but it's all right, it's just nothing fancy. The pricing is very fair. I don't think you can argue with that when looking at speccing up and building one yourself, but even though the pricing is fair, there's no getting around that this still is an expensive PC. You kind of get what you pay for, I suppose. You're paying for high-end parts and high-end performance and the convenience of someone else doing the building and the troubleshooting yourself, and you don't pay any more really than if you did do it yourself. All in all, I think it's a fast, cleanly assembled gaming machine that delivers excellent high refresh 1440p performance and then decent, strong 4K results when you use DLSS sensibly. If you don't want to, then just don't. It's a genuinely impressive PC, and I'm going to be a bit sad when they ask for me to send it back, to be honest. Anyway guys, that's the end of the review. I hope you liked it. Please leave me a like down below if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to Kit Guru to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. If you go down below this video, right below it, you'll find links to our merch store. Click on that, have a look around, pick yourself up a t-shirt if you want to, and then in the video's description, you'll find links to our Discord server, our Patreon page, and our website if you want to check any of that stuff out. The advent calendar's coming up in December, so definitely go and check the website out. Anyway guys, I've been Matt. This has been the R7X 3D Beast MSI Edition. I've forgot the name off the top of my head now. I'll speak to you in the next one. Look after yourselves. See you later.